So this is the first slide, anatomy of the aortic valve. So aortic valve apparatus consists of left ventricular outflow tract, valve cusps, sinus of Valsalva, proximal aorta and ST junction. It is a semilunar valve. It is suspended from the aortic annulus and it is also attached to the sinotubular junction by hinge points. So it forms three cusps and they are named according to the origin of the coronary arteries, like right coronary cusp, which contains right coronary artery ostia, left coronary cusp, which contains left coronary ostia, and non-coronary cusp, which doesn't have anything. And the body of the cusp is called lanula, and at the coaptation point in the center, there will be a bulge that is called as nodule of Arentis. So these are the few congenital abnormal aortic valves, and these are due to defects in development of the commissure. When there is no commissure developed during the embryonic stage, it results in unicommissural aortic valve, and only two cusps and fusion of the another commissure results in bicuspid aortic valve, which is most common congenital anomaly, about 1 to 2% of the congenital cardiac anomaly. The normal one is tricuspid aortic valve, and if there is an extra cusp, it results in quadricuspid aortic valve. So other abnormal observations are the nodule of Arentis, which is hypertrophied, and there is lambal excrescence. These are the small filamental things which are attached to the ventricular surface of the aortic valve. Usually they are innocuous and will not cause any systemic embolizations. And few like papillary fibroelastomas, these are the primary cardiac tumors arising from the cardiac valves. It is attached to the ventricular surface of the aortic valve and also the atrial surface of the mitral valve. They results in platelet aggregations as well as cause for the systemic embolization. Another extra things we can observe is vegetations because of the endocarditis of the heart valves. These are the vegetations attached to the aortic valve. These are the hypertrophic nodules of the Arentis. This is the three hypertrophic nodules which are moving at the center. So to assess the aortic valve, we have four basic views. They are two mid-esophageal and two transgastric views. So before explaining this, we will visit the basics of the that probe as well as how to get the best views. So we have a transesophageal probe which has got 8 movements, that is advancement, withdrawal, right and left rotation, multiplane angle rotation from 0 to 180 degrees, and anteflexions. So you have to be very careful while doing anteflexion because it should be in the stomach before you do that, and while withdrawal also you have to be careful. We should not withdraw in anteflexion, which may cause problem at the gastroesophageal junction. So whenever we put the probe, see that adequate amount of jelly is put and we should not cause the problem. So these are the four basic views for the assessment of the aortic valve. Mid-esophageal aortic valve short axis view, that is obtained when the probe is in the mid-esophagus. Multiplane angle is about 30 to 60 degrees. The structure we see here is three cusps of the aorta, that is left coronary cusp, right coronary cusp, and non-coronary cusp. And we can see the coronary arteries also, left main coronary artery. The application here, we can measure the aortic valve RFIs by planimetry and also assess the AR by looking at the color flow Dopplers. The limitations of this view is we cannot align the continuous wave Doppler or pulse wave Dopplers to get the measurements. Second view is mid-esophageal long axis view, that is obtained by turning 90 degrees from the first view, that is around 120 to 140 degree you get this view. Here we can see the ascending aorta, LVOT, coronary cusps, etc. And we can see in LVOT we can see the SAM as well as the hypertrophic septum. So here we can assess the ARZ by using the color flow Doppler, and we can utilize the M-mode Doppler for the measurements. The limitations of this view is we cannot use the continuous wave Doppler as well as pulse wave Doppler. The other view is transgastric view, that is transgastric aortic Lang axis view. It is obtained by advancing the probe into the stomach, anti-flexing it and slowly withdrawing and turning the multiplane angle between 90 to 120 degrees. Here we can assess the LVOT, aortic valves, and we can utilize the continuous wave Doppler and pulse wave Doppler to assess the gradient and measurement of the effective aortic valve area as well as stroke volume. And these views may be little difficult to get, but these are the main important for measurement of the prosthetic valve, perivalvular leak as well as the gradients. So another one is deep gastric aortic valve Lang axis view. It is obtained by pushing the probe deep about 50 centimeters and anti-flexing it and slowly withdrawing. Then you can see the aorta as well as the aortic root arch at the center. So what we can see here is arch of aorta, ascending aorta, as well as aortic valve and LVOT. Here the utilization of the continuous wave Doppler, pulse wave Doppler, and also color flow Doppler to assess the aortic regurgitation as well all the measurements. So limitations again, it may not be easy to get this view. These are the four basic views where we are going to assess the aortic valve. So this is the mid-esophageal aortic valve short axis. So as I told you, it is obtained at the angle between 40 to 60 degrees. Probe position is neutral. And here we have to see the detailed anatomy of the three cusps, that is non-coronary cusp, left coronary cusp and right coronary cusp, whether there is any prolapse, rupture, non-cooptation of the valve leaflets, any calcification of the valve leaflets and mobility of the leaflets, and look for the aortic regurgitation by putting the color flow Dopplers, as well as aortic valve area can be measured by planimetry, though it is not accurate as continuous by continuity equation. So this is the image of the aortic valve in mid-esophageal aortic valve short axis. This structure is LA. This is intra-atrial septum. This is the right atrium. This is the tricuspid valve, body of the right ventricle. Here you can see the pulmonary artery, pulmonary valve and pulmonary artery catheter, this white one. Here you can clearly see the three valves. The valve which is in relation to the intra-atrial septum is the non-coronary cusp, and which is far from the field and related to the right ventricle is called right coronary cusp, and the remaining is left coronary cusp. And you can see the opening of the aortic valve and closing of the aortic valve. So these are the structure you see in this view. Left atrium, right atrium separated by interventricular septum, adjacent to that is non-coronary cusp, body of the right ventricle, tricuspid and pulmonary valves. And if you have passed any catheter, that is right heart catheter, you can see here. And this is the anatomical structure of the aortic valve, what we see in mid-esophageal aortic short axis. So here you can see the origin of the left main coronary artery. If you move the probe a little bit higher, withdraw it, you can see the origin of the left coronary artery. And this is the measurement of the aortic valve area by planimetry. You select the cursor and trace the opening of the aortic valve in the mid systole when it is maximally open. So the area is 7.28 centimeters here square here, and circumference is 6.1 centimeters. This is the use of this view. Next is mid-esophageal aortic valve long axis view, which is obtained at the same level by turning the probe about 90 degrees from the initial view. The probe position is neutral, and here we can do aortic root measurements, assess the aortic regurgitation by color flow Doppler, and we can see certain abnormalities like aortic aneurysm, dissection flap if it is there, atheroma in the ascending aorta, and we can see the hypertrophy of the interventricular septum, that is hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, systolic anterior motion of the mitral leaflet, and subvalvular subbiotic membrane, anything. By putting color flow Doppler, we can see whether there is any flow acceleration of the at the LVOT depicting the valvular stenosis, and we can see the AR jet, and by it helps in eyeballing the grading of the AR jet in this view. This is the mid esophageal aortic long axis view. Here you see the left atrium. This is the mitral valve. This is the anterior mitral leaflet. This is the posterior mitral leaflet. This is the LV cavity, interventricular septum. This is the right ventricle. You can see the PA catheter here, which is moving, and these are the valve cusps. The valve which is near to the right ventricle is the RCC, that is right coronary cusp, and which is near to that field, that is opposite to RCC, is either NCC or LCC according to the probe position. You can turn the probe to the left so to see the left coronary cusp, and turn the probe towards right to see the right coronary cusp. These are the structure we see here, the sinuses of Valsalva and the ST junction and tubular portion of the ascending aorta. These are the anatomical structures we see, and here we can see any valve collapse, calcification of the aortic valve, and there is any rupture of sinus of Valsalva. All these things we can see in this view. This is the color flow Doppler we put. We can see a mild aortic regurgitation jet in the center. These are the measurements we do here. We do the measurement of LVOT diameter as well as the annular diameter in mid systole, that is when the valve leaflets are fully open, you measure the aortic annulus as well as the LVOT, and when in the diastole you measure the sinus of Valsalva as well as ST junction diameter and also ascending aortic diameter. These are the diameter we measure in this view. This is the valve turned towards the left. This is LCC. And valve turned towards the right. It shows the non-coronary cusp at the top. And most of the times or sometimes it may be associated with other valvular abnormalities like mitral regurgitation, as we see here. Now come to the other two views, that is deep transgastric views. This is obtained by advancing the probe into the stomach and anti-flexing and slowly withdrawing the probe. We see two views here, one at 0 degrees or 0 to 20 degrees and another at 120 to 140 degrees. The probe position is anti-flexed. It is good alignment with the cursor for the flow for the measurements, and it helps in detecting and grading the regurgitation by color flow as well as utilization of the continuous waveform and also the pulse waveform. And we can measure the VTI cardiac output also in these views. This is the typical deep transgastric view. In this view, we see here the full, rarely we see the full cavity of the left ventricle. Here we can see even towards the apex. So this is the aortic valve. This is the ST junction and also the arch of aorta. This is the right ventricle. This is the left atrium. Left atrium, mitral valve, left ventricle, and this is the LVOT and aortic valves, ascending aorta as well as a part of arch of aorta. Here you can see the aortico-mitral continuity, and this view, if we put the color Doppler, we can measure the amount of or grading of the aortic regurgitation can be done if it is present. Here it is a mild aortic regurgitation. This is probe is pushed a little bit to obtain a good view of the arch of aorta as much as possible. This is the arch of aorta. the mid-papillary weave. You get the mid-papillary weave and turn the multiplane angle to 120 degrees. You get the other view, that is transgastric aortic long axis view. This view and the previous view aligns with the Doppler probe so that we can take all the measurements, and this view is particularly important in measurement of the gradients as well as assessment of the prosthetic aortic valves. Once again, we have put the color flow Doppler here, so we can see a mild aortic regurgitation. Here again, this is the LV cavity, this is the RCC, and this is the NCC. And come to the measurements, what we can measure by utilizing these four basic views. One is we can measure the aortic valve area by planimetry, and it is subjected to observer's variability because the view you get. So when aortic valve is fully open in the diastole, you can utilize the cursor to measure this. And here the mid-esophageal aortic long axis view, we can measure this LVOT diameter, aortic annulus diameter, sinus of Walsall, IST junction, as well as ascending aorta. These are the normal values. Annulus measures about 1.3 plus or minus 0.1 centimeter per meter square. It are indexed to the body surface area. Sinus of Valsalva, these are the normal values on the higher limit, sinotubular junction and proximal ascending aorta. See, we have to observe for the normal values as well as whether there is dilatation, aneurysmal dilatation, post-stenotic dilatation, whether there is a dissection flap, whether there is any broken valves or collapsing valves, AR, all these things helps us if we know the normal valvular diameters. So this is how we measure the aortic valve area by planimetry, obtain mid-esophageal short axis view, optimize the image by reducing the gain and eliminate the bright echoes, trace the orifice with the tracing caliper. The limitation is not very accurate when leaflets are heavily calcified. You cannot see the margins, and inter-observer variability is there. And a few words about the continuous wave Doppler and the pulse wave Doppler. Continuous wave Doppler is used to measure the high velocity flows, whereas pulse wave Doppler used to measure the low velocity flows. And continuous wave Doppler uses two crystals simultaneously, one in the transducer, one constantly sending the signals and the other constantly receiving. And it can determine the high velocity flow by more than 1.2 meters per second. The only problem with is range ambiguity. We exactly cannot pinpoint from where this high velocity is coming along the line of measurement. Whereas in the pulse wave Doppler, it uses only one crystal that alternates the sending and receiving the signals, and it is timed so that the range resolution is high, range ambiguity is not there. It is good for the low velocity flows, and it can measure the sample from discrete area of 1 to 3 millimeters. And quantitative assessment of the aortic valve area, and also the pressures, we use Bernoulli's equation, which tells that which uses the law of conservation of energy principle to give us peak pressure, mean pressure, and also velocity time integral, by which we can measure the aortic valve area as well as the stroke volume. So by simplifying the Bernoulli's equation, we can have maximum gradient is 4 times the peak jet velocity square. Mean gradient is 4 times the mean velocity square. Mean gradient well correlates with the invasive measurements in the cath lab. So with these Doppler measurements, the limitation is the gradients are flow dependent. In case of LV dysfunction, aortic stenosis, even though stenosis or valve area is less, because of the cardiac output is reduced, it may not give the exact pressure gradients. So another thing for the objective measurement is continuity equation for calculation of the aortic valve area. The Cursor should be placed parallel to the direction of blood flows. Trace the LVOT and aortic valve Doppler velocities. Clearly define the envelope required. Sometimes you get two envelopes, that is double envelope technique. The first one, proximal one, is the LVOT trace, and the distal one is the aortic trace. We'll come to know the next slides. And you can measure both LVOT as well as aortic velocity time integral and do the calculations. So continuity equation says that what goes in must come out. So LVOT stroke volume is equal to AV stroke volume. So stroke volume is equal to cross sectional area into velocity time integral. The cross sectional area is derived from obtaining the LVOT diameter, that is by pi r square, pi into r square, or diameter by 2 square. Velocity time integral is measured by continuous wave Doppler. So aortic valve area is equal to velocity time integral LVOT into LVOT area divided by velocity time integral of aortic valve. This is the formula used to calculate the aortic valve area. This is how we measure. See, the alignment of the Doppler angle is very important, and it should not be more than 15 degrees. If it is more than 30 degrees, it gives error in the measurement. See, this is how we trace the continuous wave Doppler. So here we get velocity time integral of 21.1 centimeter, maximum velocity 97.3 centimeters per second, and maximum gradient is 3.78 and mean gradient is 2.76, which is a normal value. There is no. And to align the Doppler line, we can utilize the color Doppler, or we can turn the probe to get the maximum acoustic signal also. This is how we measure the peak or the maximum velocity. You can get it, and it is 4 times the maximum velocity square gives you the peak pressure. These are the double envelope. This shows the LVOT envelope, and this is the aortic valve envelope. This is the pulse wave Doppler of the LVOT. You can put the pulse wave Doppler and get it for the measurement when you are not getting the double envelope. And you have to take the outer brighter side trace for the measurement of the gradients. And measurement of the cardiac output using these views. First, we have to calculate the LVOT area. That is, LVOT area is equal to pi r square, what I told. Here the diameter we measure, diameter is 2r, that is diameter divided by 2 gives the radius, that is pi r square. After calculating, you calculate the LVOT velocity time integral by putting the continuous wave Doppler and tracing that this thing. The area under the trace gives us velocity time integral. So cardiac output or stroke volume is LVOT area into LVOT VTI. Cardiac output is the multiple of the heart rate. Come to the M mode. See, we can utilize the M mode in mid esophageal long axis. Here you put the M mode tracing line at the valve opening point. So you get these kind of pictures. Here, this is the aortic valve, and this is the aortic valve opening. This is aortic valve closing point. So aortic valve opening and aortic valve closing point, this is called LVOT ejection time. This we can get even in deep transgastric view. Also put this continuous wave Doppler. There you can measure the aortic valve opening and aortic valve closing time. So, and here we can, if it is opening before the Q wave, that is early opening of the aortic valve when there is more pressure in the LV cavity, or early closure of the aortic valve happens in hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy or systolic anterior motion of the anterior mitral valve. And this is LV ejection time is an indirect indicator of the cardiac output, and normal value is about 360 plus or minus 20 seconds. So this is application of the color flow Doppler. There is a mild AR, that's why we are getting this color flow in between the or in the diastole. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jay, for that lucid explanation of assessment of aortic valve using transmissible echocardiography. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Can we have the comments and questions now? Dr. Vinayak Deshurkar, are you available? Dr. Sanjeevani Namdar, do you want to comment anything?
Hello.
Yes. Please unmute and comment.
Yes, it was a very nice, simple, and really I revisited the whole thing again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you can be a little more loud.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear. You.
It was really a nice and very clear presentation. All the views were beautiful. Only one thing that when LVOT calculation is difficult due to calcification or due to anatomy of the heart, then an LVOT diameter is very important because on that diameter the whole calculation and your treatment and everything is going to depend on that, and it is squared, so the error is also doubled.
Yes.
So when LVOT cannot be calculated properly, then there is one projected LVOT calculation formula.
Yes.
That is 5.7 into body surface area. 5.7, I will write down in the comment box.
Yes.
5.7 into body surface area.
Yes.
Plus add to it 12, number 12.
Okay.
So when you have real difficulty, this for average person of 1.8 body surface area, it comes to approximately 22 millimeter. Right. So when your calculation is somewhere near this figure, you are okay with you can go ahead with other calculations. So this is it is known as projected LVOT diameter.
Thank you for that additional point. Well taken. Thank you so much.
Another thing is
yes.
When you compare 2D measurement to 3D measurement of aortic valve area, there is a discrepancy. 3D gives better picture. We all know that.
Yeah.
And there is a formula for 3D. I think you all must be knowing that. For 2D, that is continuity equation. We all know that. And for 3D, it is stroke volume divided by aortic valve VTI. So if you put the same figure of a same person, it certainly will give 3D will give more area of the valve. So I think 3D is better than 2D. That we all know that, but only just wanted to emphasize it again.
Yes, thank you once again. Thank you for that additional point.
Good morning, sir, and Jai Prakash, everybody. I have a little one question.
Yes,
Prakash, in low pressure, low gradient, yes. What are this one? How are you going to conclude? It's a low pressure, low gradient in echo T. Hello.
Yes. Jai Prakash, can you take up that question?
not hearing, please. Not able to hear.
Okay. Good morning, sir.
Yes.
So in this condition, when there is low, that is LV dysfunction with AS, the pressures will be less. Actually, the gradient will be less. Better to use 3D for the measurement of effective aortic orifice, because I have not covered only the normal aortic valve. I am covering. I have not got into MS and MR because next topic is there.
Yeah, I think that will be covered next time. Basically, when there is low pressure, low
Yes,
gradient, if you
No,
want to,
just
the assessment of the aortic valve will include dopamine stress testing and then see what happens to the cardiac index and the gradient across the valve. If the cardiac index and the gradient across the valve increase, it means that there is contractile reserve function is preserved. Whereas if it actually does not increase, actually sometimes it may actually fall. It means that the contractile function is poor. And see these cases, if you replace the valve, the mortality rate is going to be very high, as much as 50%. So in low pressure, low gradient, the valve area is low and the gradient is low and the ejection fraction is low and the cardiac index is also low. So to decide operability, we do the dopamine stress test and see what happens to the gradient, valve area, the cardiac index, and then come to a conclusion. I think this will be covered in the next session. So my comments about Jayaprakash was a good presentation, but I just wanted to have two clarifications.
Yes, sir.
In the deep transgastric view, you mentioned the angle of 0 to 120 degrees. Is it really 0 to 120 or 0 to 20 degrees?
That is in deep transgastric, it is 0 to 20 degrees, and the other view, that is transgastric
Long axis view. That is long axis view. That is not deep transgastric. That is just.
It is not deep transgastric, sir. Deep transgastric, it comes at 0 degree, or we can adjust a little bit 10 to 20 degrees.
And the other thing which I wanted to clarify from you is when you're doing the planimetry of the aortic valve, you showed a valve area of about 6.5.
That is circumference 6.17, and valve area is 2.17 centimeter square.
Okay. That clarifies. Any other questions and comments?
So there is one question from Marcos L. Parlet. Please tell us something about low flow, low gradient AS evaluation on table.
It is done.
Just we discussed about that. I think it will be covered next time. In short, I told that you have, if the pressure, the gradient is low and the valve area is low, we have to know whether it's a true stenosis or pseudo stenosis, or if there's any contractile dysfunction is present. For that, we have to do dopamine stress test. In the controlled condition, dopamine is started at 2 to 5 microgram per kg per minute and is increased up to 20 mics. To be able to, this is done under echocardiographic screening, and we will look at the valve area and the gradients and the ejection fraction during the measurement. And then if the gradient increases and the valve area remains same, it means that the contractile function is good, and this is not a pseudo stenosis, and this is just low pressure, low gradient. But if the valve area increases, it may be a pseudo stenosis. Sometimes what happens, LVEF is the ejection stroke volume is low, and the aortic valve is not exactly opening fully. So when you give the inotropes, it opens fully. So the aortic valve area actually increases. So that is pseudo stenosis. And if the ejection fraction actually comes down when it is stressed with dopamine, it means that the contractile function is poor. So all these factors are taken into consideration to categorize the low flow, low gradient aortic stenosis into true stenosis, pseudo stenosis, poor contractile function, and then the operative, the option to operate is what are the risks involved in operation should be explained to the relations, and then only the surgical procedure can be undertaken.
Thank you. Thank you.
But This is in short, but I think it will be covered next time when we talk about aortic stenosis.
Correct. That's why there was no overlap. I didn't want to overlap the stenosis and regurgitation, even the slides. So I have kept it.
Yeah, this was only about assessment, so that's what you have done justice to the topic. I am not.
Thank you for explaining, sir. Thank
you. Yeah. Any other questions? And Dr. Kumar from Madurai is there? We have 2-3 minutes more to go. Anybody wants to ask?
Can I comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
See why we have to differentiate between true and pseudo stenosis is that basically the treatment changes. Because see, not we should not be observed. What he needs is LV failure management. Very vital for rather which
Can you please check your audio? We can't hear you. Please check your audio. We can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear. Please keep all the microphones muted unless you're speaking.
Hello. See why we have to differentiate between pseudo stenosis and true stenosis. It has to be before the surgery because the treatment differs. The pseudo stenosis doesn't need any surgery. Actually, he needs failure management, LV failure management. So the question which is in the chat box that on table how to differentiate, it has to be done before surgery, not during or anything. He is actually not for surgery.
Okay, there is one comment. Can I read it? We recently had a case wherein pre-op LVEF was reported as 56% with a gradient of 86/48. Echo done 1 month prior, no worsening of symptoms in between. On table, we found EF of 28% and mean gradient of 24. Is there any role of putting the patient on low dose dopamine prior to sternotomy and demonstrate increased gradient period? See, this patient apparently had depressed myocardial function on table, and the gradient has come down. And if you in theory, what you say is right. You can do a low dose dopamine and see whether the gradient increases and DF improves, which means that the contractile function is preserved and patient can undergo the surgery. You're right. So LVEF was 56% 1 month prior and gradient is high. So the severe aortic stenosis with preserved LV function to start with, but on table the gradient has come down and DF has fallen, which means that their myocardial depression either preoperatively or intraoperatively. Difficult to say because we do not have immediate preoperative readings. Any comments on this, Sanjeevani, Vinayak, or?
Muralidhar.
Yes.
With this patient, I think with strain and speckle coming in a big way now, one can do that before surgery. And if the GLS is already low, that means it's already in failure. So one has to see whether it is true or pseudo and then proceed.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But the point here is, I think they have not done the echo within 24 hours or 48 hours or within 1 week of the surgery. There is a report which is done 1 month ago. So whether the patient worsened quickly within 1 month or patient developed LV dysfunction on table, and then the reading is CF of 28%, which is half the original value, and the gradient also come down to 24. That is to be identified whether it is just preoperative or intraoperative.
Yes.
That is my comment on this.
Yes.
Jayaprakash, do you have any bright idea on this case?
No, that's what, sir. See, if you do dopamine stress test, you'll come to know whether it is pseudo or true stenosis.
No, this patient had a severe aortic stenosis to start with. 1 month ago, the echo was done. But on table, EF was only 28% and gradient is only 24, which was 48, which is both the things are half the value. Patient might have developed intraoperative myocardial dysfunction, or patient had dysfunction to begin with.
Does he have this coronaries normal, sir?
We don't know that. The information is not provided here.
Okay. Maybe he had a concomitant myocardial ischemia and LV dysfunction.
Possible. That's
Can-
possibility.
Can I comment? Muralidhar?
Yeah, absolutely.
See now this 56% of EF now they are coming with all GLS and strain picture in the coming in a big way. The new guidelines until now they have said 50% of ejection fraction as a cutoff value, but now it will come as to 60%. 50 will be taken as a OEF. So that is one more thing that with GLS coming in a big way, it has already started failing long back.
Yeah, I agree. GLS will help us to tell, see, the ejection fraction may be preserved, but the GLS may be depressed. So that is the beginning stage of LV dysfunction. So I think we can include GLS whenever we are doing the echo preoperatively and then quantify the GLS and then see what happens in the intraoperative period.
And such a big surgery, one has to do echo again before surgery. I think 1 month is a long period.
Yeah, I would do it 24 hours. Usually that is our practice, to do the echo 1 day before, to look at the any fresh changes have taken place between the time of diagnosis and time of surgery, actual surgery. That is the policy in our hospital. I think we need to close this session now. We thank you very much, Jayaprakash.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I thank all the audience and thank you so much. Have a nice day. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you so much. We'll meet again next Sunday. Tomorrow we have cardiac anesthesia certificate session at 7 p.m. Please join us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rajiv, for all the technical support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, attendees, and thank you, faculty. Thank you, all the members available in the lobby. We'll meet on next Sunday with a new topic. And tomorrow we'll be having cardiac anesthesia classes. Link will be sent to your respective teams in the WhatsApp group. Kindly check for the same.
Rajiv,
thank you all.
So much. Rajiv, thank you so much for coordinating nicely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It's my duty, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. See you tomorrow. 7
Happy Sunday all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.